easy, short class. You know, those little doses of information, little tidbits we get, you know, we can munch on that. And you don't want to overfeed. You overfeed, you can't take it. Can't take it. All right, here we go. Yeah. Share. Oh, okay. See my screen?
Yes.
All right, good. All right, so as we know, you know, the Hithpael is our last course of action to find out how do we work within the present tense verb stems. So we've done the past tense, we've done the future tense, and now we're doing the present tense. And in each one of those categories, we've hit all four groups. So this is group number 4, right? This is group number 4 on the present tense, which is the Hithpael, doing the action on oneself verbs. Again, you have your vocabulary that you see. Let me expand it a little bit more for us so we can see it. And lo and behold, one of the first words that we're using, number 178, is tuma. And tuma means to be impure. That was part of our Torah portion. Second word is kader. Third is sock. Like it sounds like sock, like wear your sock. Let me see here. Right here. Sock. Sounds like sock. And it means sackcloth. Okay. Then we have a sofer, okay, a sofer. And so, you know, we know the Hebrews or the 3-letter roots are the mainstay, right? So we got 4 letters there. So which one do you think is added? Out of all 4 of these letters, which one is added to it to make it into?
Wow.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So a sofer is a scribe, right? And so if we took away the Y and we just put the samak and the pay and the resh, then we would have, you know, sefer, which has to do with a record or a writing. Okay. Something's written, a sefer or a scroll, or sometimes known as a book or a record, like a record book. Okay. So you can see the connection between the person who is the scribe, who's actually doing the writing or writing the scroll, is a scribe. So when we see words like sofer, we know it has to do with sefer, which has to do with the writing. So they're not too far off. You know, so it's kind of easy to capture and gather, you know, how they're connected. Then you have parash and kasein, just all these different words, marom. Now, let me ask a question. Now, we know in this word right here, marom, I found the word Rome. And Rome is probably connected to the word, what they would say in English, room, R-U-M. Why is this pen not acting right? Room. And room means to rise. So that's where they get this idea of on high. You know, this doesn't mean heaven. That's not correct. It's on high. Okay. So again, I just want to show you these connections between these words, how you can take one word and you can expand it. You can turn sefer into a sofer. You can turn Rome or room to rise into marom. So you got to find different things in these different words, especially when there's more than one letter. If it's 3 letters, you get pretty much got an idea what it is in terms of it being, you know, a noun, right? A Zaquain. Okay. So a Zaquain is an old person or a bearded person. Okay. Sava, which has to do with army. It's one part of Yah's title, then Oz, and then Ra'as or Ra'ash. Ra'ash is noise, the Nadir is mighty. And then you have La'umath, which is the opposite, and Saraf. They got here Sorof, which is not true, and Saraf. Saraf is one who burns. That is an angel. It's true. It is a type of malak, right? But he's from Saraf, and Saraf means to burn. So it's the burning ones. That's what a Saraf is. It's a burning malakim, okay? This stands close to the Most High, okay? And then we have Baruch, to be blessed, and then Oliyad, meaning by through or by the means of or next to, okay? So those are our vocabulary words, and more than likely you're going to see them in some way or another in this lesson. Okay, so the present tense group number 4 verbs we know are actions that describe someone doing the action on himself or herself, causing himself to do the action on oneself. You know, I brushed my hair, I washed my teeth, I dressed myself, I fed myself, all those different types of things. I sanctified myself. Okay. And so what's easy to remember about this is that it only consists of, in the past tense, it consists of these 2 letters, which is a hey and a tav. And this is the reason why, you know, they call it a Hithpael. Okay. So if we separate that, this is our hith right here, which is considered an H for the first letter, which is a hey, and a tav, which is the second, but they just put this here so you could pronounce it. By itself, it would just be a H and a TH. So you wouldn't know how to sound that. So what they do is they put another letter in there or a vowel in there so you can pronounce it. That's why they call it hith. And then a Pael means to do the work. Say, so really, Pael is to do work. And this right here is on myself. That's what that means, on myself. Okay, and then you can see that in these 3 examples that they have here. I sanctify myself. Okay, so when I started learning this, I was like, okay, well, there's a lot of letters here. So what I want to do is I want to know how to chop everything down, just like they do in your answer sheet. They chop everything down into the 3-letter verb, right? The root, they chop it down. And then after they chop it down, they might add a letter to the end, you know? So don't get intimidated, again, by looking at the whole entire word, which we're going to do. And what we've been learning is we want to chop things down so we can just break it down like they do in our answer sheet. When you do it this way, when you're looking at a word, practice doing this. Okay, so find your 3-letter root, know your what they call them suffixatives or your suffixes. You know, your suffix right there, because it's the word or the letter T, then you know that has to do with I. Okay, and you know that it is in the past tense. You know that because it's right here on the end of the word. Okay, this additional part here, remember, is doing something on myself. So you might read it in this way from this direction, you know, hith quadashti, okay, hith quadashti. But to translate it, all you do is you read in this direction, okay, and then you turn around and you translate in this direction. And what's going on is you're using your eyes going this to your left, but you're working from your right. So your eyes are here on your right-hand side, and then you're going to take your eyes and you're going to go from your right to your left. And then once you're finished, now you're going to use another side of your brain. You're going to make your eyes go back in this direction. And that's giving you what they would say a current. You're creating a current. Okay. Before, when we're in English, we're just going this way. So all of this, we're going this way. That's all, from left to right. That's all you're doing. So you're not getting a current, okay? You're going to streamline, but there's no it's not a circle. It's not a circuit, okay? So when we're dealing in Hebrew, you're dealing with literally a circuitry with your brain. Your brain is electrical, and so your eyes. So this is what makes you super smart, because you're literally using both sides of your brain. You know how they say that you're a better boxer if you can box with both hands? You know, a lot of people are limited to only being right-handed, and they can't do anything with their left. But once you start doing this with your eyes, it makes things a lot easier, and you get stronger mentally. It's just the truth. It happened to me. Like I said, I'm learning other languages, and they're nothing to me now. Nothing. There's just zippo, nothing. The structure of the grammar is very similar, you know, in some ways. You know, so still the past, present, and future. It might be a different writing style, you know. I don't get the honor of going from right to left, except for if I'm in a Middle Eastern type of language, you know, like Aramaic, they're from right to left, okay? Because matter of fact, the letters in which we see right here are Aramaic letters. These are all Aramaic letter script, handwriting style, all of them. So in the book of Daniel, they have Aramaic in there and they have Hebrew. So they're using Aramaic letters to even write out Hebrew words, okay? Pronunciations are Hebrew and are Aramaic. So not to go too far in that, but the goal is every time you look at any word, you just chop it down, okay? So this next example right here, I wash myself. We know the I is wash, and then the rakats. If you know your vocabulary, oh, that's washed. So when you become familiar, you see it a lot, then you'll be able to recognize it. The hith right here is myself. And that's all you should remember, you know, in terms of being able to translate it. From just recognizing it, you say, like, you know what? It means myself. Just accept it and leave it alone, okay? Grammatically, we know that it's hith. We know that, okay? What's the Hithpael? So if this is a hith, then what is the Hithpael in this sentence or in this word? What's the Hithpael? What's the action? Because that's what work is. Hithpael is work. What's the Hithpael?
To wash.
Yes, it's rakats, because that is the action, and the action is the work, which is the verb, which in this case is our root. Okay, that's our root right there, the three letters. So if it's a root and it's put in the ground, often we think it's just there. It's not. It's actually working. How does it work? How does a root work? Like of a tree or a flower. What is it doing underneath the ground?
Spreading. It's being the foundation.
Yes. So it's doing something. It's spreading. Okay. It's going deep. Okay. It's becoming firm in order to establish, right? The stem. So once the stem is strong, you could take that root, which is rakats, and you can add different things to it. You can make it into, you know, Hithpael. All these things are just pieces that they're adding to the root. Remember, so the tree, your stem is coming out. That's your tree, right? That's what's coming out of the ground, and then it's going to have some other branches. So what we have here is the 7 branches, and one of the 7 branches, like the menorah, is one of them is the Hithpael. That's one of them. So you could take that in particular root, rakats, and put in Hithpael. That's one of the branches off the root. Okay. Let me draw a better picture so I can really show you what I'm saying. Because if you can understand the agricultural part of the language, then what's going to happen is you're going to start understanding how you should work with it. It won't be foreign to you anymore because you'll be like, okay, well, I know it's a root, right? So let's just start right here. Here's the ground. I don't care how many times we got to go over it. Okay. You're going to put a seed in the ground. Doop, doop. Okay. You can put that noon in the ground. Okay. Once the seed goes into the soil, eventually it's going to burst open. It's going to have a root. Okay. In our case, it's going to be two parents, right? A male and a female, because that's how you make something. You need both in order for something to grow. Then once it grows, it'll come out. Okay. So let's just say, for example, let me look what word I can use here. These are all adopted roots. Let's just say it's look for the right word. Okay. Let's just say it's Av, right? So on one part of the root out of the parent root, because the parent root takes two letters. So the two letters that we're going to say here, the parent root is going to be the Aleph, and we're going to use the Bet. Okay. Now, if I want to make it into a child, then the letter is not going to be a two letter. How many letters is it going to be?
3.
It's going to be 3. So now when the child comes up, the child can be either there's 4 letters that could be a child. It could be an Aleph, it could be a Hey, it could be a Wa, or it could be a Yod. And in this case, they're not that all parents will have these same 4 kids. They might have just one of them or 2 of them. Okay. So in this case, let's just use the Yod. Let's just use the Yod as the child. Okay. Because let me just put up here so you can get confused. 3-letter root is a child root. Okay. So now once these parents are come together and they burst open and then the seed grows, and this is what you would call your stem. This is a stem right here. Okay. And it's a stem that consists of 3 letters. Okay. Which it'll be the Aleph, the Yod, and the Bet. That Yod could be in the first place, it could be in the second place, it could be in the third place, it could be any of those places. But it shares something of its characteristics with both its parents. Okay. So the stem vowel right here in Hebrew would be called Oyev. And Oyev means an enemy. That's what that word means. Oyev means an enemy. That's what the 3-letter root of Oyev means, which is a Aleph, a Yod, and a Bet. Okay, that right there means enemy. Well, how is it connected to a father? Well, it's connected to a father because the father sits at the gate of, or not the gate, but the door of the tent, and he guards against enemies. Okay, with his what? With his hand. Okay, so that stem is Oyev, and Oyev will grow and say, okay, well, that's the stem. Now we have all these branches. We got 7 branches that come off of that in particular root. Okay. And so those branches can be, group number 1, group number 2, group number 3. That's what you've been working with, and group number 4. So I'm just telling you the group numbers because that's what you've been working with, right? So it could be group number 4. So we know group number 1 is a simple action. So the enemy, from some perspective, can operate in a very simple way. This Oyev can be. You can use it in a forceful way. You might be able to use it in a causative way. Okay. And then also, too, it could be on oneself. See? So that's how this happens. So you have this building of this stem. Now, will they all be able to have the 7 branches off of it? No, because do all trees have the same amount of branches? No, you might have 2 or 3. You might have 4. You might get all 7. Who knows? Just like you don't have all 3 children what I mean, using all four of the verbs, the letters for the verbs, you have an opportunity, you got a possibility, but it doesn't mean that you're going to have, you're going to use the aleph in every single one of the roots that you have, or the hey, or the wa, or the yod. That's why they have a thing called adopted roots, because you can adopt different children into your family. So for example, I was looking for a word to use, but all I saw was Quadash. That doesn't have a yod, it doesn't have an aleph, it doesn't have a wa, it doesn't have a hey in it. So I know that more than likely this is an adopted root. It is, because it doesn't have any one of those four vowels in it, one of these four letters that represent a vowel or a consonant. It doesn't have it in it. So I know, okay, that's an adopted root. I know the rakats doesn't have it either. So that's not an original child root. So if it's not original, it's something that has to be adopted. And then the question comes then, okay, if it's adopted, then who are the parents? That's when you got to go to your lexicon and you got to find out and research, okay, well, where did this child come from? Who adopted this family? Was it the Resh and the Ket? Or was it the Ket and the Zadi? We don't know. You know what I'm saying? So that's part of the language that is not really taught, especially by people are, doing the books and they're just telling you how to say the stuff and all the vowel points, but they don't really get into the family of letters, and they don't get into the agriculture of the letter, okay, or the letters. And therefore it becomes a problem because it's hard for you to remember, because you're like, I don't know, but if you understand that this idea of it being a stem, then it has to be three letters. You know that. And if you know it's three letters, then okay, that's a child root. I know that for sure. Okay. So if it's a child, then obviously the child came from a two letter from a parent and it was added. Okay. I know that. And then off of that, you can have any of the group ones. And how does that child behave? Let's just talk in those terms. Or how does this, not only child, but how does this plant? Because look, when we say plants and stuff, we don't even think of a plant being living. We don't even really think of it in the language as being living. We don't look at it as it being a child. It is. This language is about birthing. It's about bringing forth things. When we talk about having a stem, it has branches, and then eventually it has some leaves. And then eventually, after you get your leaves on it, you're going to have some fruit on it. You can only do that if it's living. This language is living, okay? So that's the part that I want to teach you as well, not just the letters and not just the grammar on it, but I want to show you how do you put the pieces together. So your mind has to become on both sides, like an agricultural way. And then also too, you have to look at it from a grammatical structural way. How is it structured? So that's the easiest way for anyone to understand this language, is by breaking it down and finding out what the root is. After I found out the root, I want to say who's going to do the action on this root. I'm going to do it. And how am I going to do it? I'm going to do it on myself. How was it done? It was done in a simple way. It was done in a passive way. It was done, I actively done it. So you got to know all those different ways. And that's what you do in your gardening. You're looking at how things work. So love, just think about now, listen what they said. He says the hey in the top, which is the hith, is added onto the front of the root. That tells us that I did the action on myself. Okay. So the root is always there. In the present tense, we also add two letters onto the front of the root. See here, see how they keep using the same term? The root. The root is where it's at. So it's about adding letters to the root. So in the present tense, we're going to also add two letters, but these two letters are not going to be the past tense letters. It's going to be these two letters. See? So in every, if it's in past, present, and future, then it has to operate differently. So you can identify and you can make a distinguishment between that which is in the past, not only by what's on the end, but this also tells you how it's done and what tense it's in. Is it in the past, present, or future? So you got all kind of indicators. Here, this is present tense. So in the present tense, all they're doing is switching out the first letter from a hey to a mem. And that's all you got to remember. In our charts and tables that you've been receiving, you will see that that mem is being used all the time. You know, it might have one dot on it, it might have two dots on it, it might have the three dots under it, you know, but that mem is letting you know that it is in the present tense. Okay. It's in the present tense. So let's look at another example. So here in these examples, the first one up there was I was doing this and I washed myself, I dressed myself, I sanctified myself. Here, again, let's find out what the root is. That's the first thing I'm telling you to look for. Look for the root. So you can get an idea about, you know, what am I talking about? So we know Quadesh is to be sanctified or set apart. We determine that. Now, since it's only a 3-letter root and there was nothing added to it, you know, except for this mem and this tav, before that, 3 letters by itself means it's kind of like in a tense where you're talking about he. Okay, there's nothing added to the end like a ah, like, you know, Quadasha. It's not no I added to it. There's no lu to it. There's none of that. So again, you got to find out, am I talking about a he? Am I talking about a she? Am I talking about an us or a we? What am I talking about? Okay. We know that it's a he, right? Simply because it's in his 3-letter root by itself perfectly. That's what we know. This part right here is just added to let you know what tense it's in. That's all I want to find out is what tense it's in. Am I in a perfect, am I in a perfect past or present? And this tells me that I'm in a present tense. But also too, it not only tells me what tense I'm in, but it tells me how this in particular root, or what I would say, this this verb, this action that I'm taking, how am I doing it in the present? Well, because it has the mem and the tav on it, that automatically tells you that it's doing something on himself. If it's he doing it, then he's doing it on himself. If it's she's doing it on herself. Okay. So it just depends on what letters are added. So the myth is going to be the identifying sign to tell you that this is in the present tense and is doing it on oneself, whether it's himself, herself, themselves, okay, or ourselves. And if you notice, when I say he, I say she, or if I say them, those are all third person. Okay. And that could be masculine, feminine, and then of course the them is the plural, right? Third person. These two right here are singular. So it's first person, second person, third person. Now we're in this thing, we're talking about third person. If it was I'm sanctifying myself right now, where or what would you guess that would say that I'm sanctifying myself?
You would have to add the T at the end?
No, because that one is past tense.
Oh, past. Oh,
So
I need verb.
huh?
Not sure that. Would you add the pronoun? I'm sorry, I need.
You are more than likely. That's possible. They've written it out that way. But I think too that I think we'd have to identify it by the root. Like, what is the root? Does it have something that's added to the front of it? If it's in the back, we know it's the past, right? If it's adding a letter to the front, it would probably be an aleph, because aleph in the right. This is what tells you that it's what tense it's in. Okay, So we have to identify, remember, when we're looking at something, we're looking for the person, we're looking for the gender, and we're looking for the number. Those are the things too we're looking at. The reason why we know this is he is because it doesn't have any letters added to the front or to the back or in the middle. That's why we know that it's he, because it's perfect. If it was female, it'd be on the end. Okay. All because it's added to the end right here, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's in the past tense, because the is what identifies this as a feminine. Okay. So we'd have to look at the chart to, I don't remember off the top of my head, but I know that you have to have some type of way to identify it. Okay. So this moth, I think I'll find that answer. The moth, or the myth, excuse me, the myth is added onto the front of the root. It tells us that the person doing the action on himself right now in the present. Okay. So the group number 4 for the passive form is this. Okay. It's interesting to say passive form. It really should say both active and passive, because the person doing the action is the one actively doing it. On themselves is the passive part of it. So they kind of dropped the ball, in my opinion, when they didn't mention that it's an active passive. Okay. Because this is the first lesson in the group number 1 present tense. See, so we don't want to miss that. Okay. So when he talks about active and passive, just to kind of cover that before we go any further, active is the one doing the action. That's the person doing the action. Passive is the one who's receiving the action on themselves, right? So if you're actively, I'm doing it, I'm doing the action on myself. Passive is the one who's receiving the action, which is me, okay? I'm doing the action on myself. The myself is the one receiving the passive action. Okay. Unlike all other 6 verb stems, active, passive in each one of those. Okay. So group 1 has an active, passive. Active, person doing the action. Passive, the one who's receiving the action, not the same person. Group number 2, active, passive, person who's forcefully doing the action. And the person passively is the one who's receiving that forceful action. Group number 3, they have an active, passive. Active is the one who's causing someone else to receive the action. The one receiving the action is the passive one, okay, which is the what they call the Hithpael. Group number 3, causative. So in any case, you're going to always have something. And so in group number 4 is what they would call reflexive. You might hear this term called reflexive. That means that it's reflecting, it's reflexing. So the action is being done by the same person who is receiving the action, which is himself or herself. So they're being active and they're being passive at the same time. That's why it's called reflective. Okay. Just wanted you to know that. They don't go into quite so much detail, but that's what it is. Let's look at the next thing here. I'm gonna find out about that other one. All right. Okay, there's my answer to the question. All right. So if it's a present tense, and don't, I'm just, they're using a definite person. Like, for example, conversation would make sense if it says, I'm dressing myself. No one ever, that's not going to be written like that. It's going to be written like David, or Sarah, or Abraham, or whatever. Because remember, we're talking about that action is going on presently at that moment. So it's going to give you a description of who's doing the action, right? So for example, it says, if we were to translate something, we wouldn't say, I dress myself, I'm sanctifying myself. It'd have to actually tell you the name of the personal pronoun, which is Dawid. Okay, so let's take a look at these three verbs that are mentioned on the previous page and show you how we're going to use them in the present tense again. You will see that there are only 4 ways. That rule is still the same. There are only 4 ways of using a present tense verb. Okay. So here, Dawid is sanctifying himself. Dawid is doing the action on himself. He's Mith Quadesh. Sarah. What's the difference when it says Sarah and she's my Kodesh? What's the difference with the root? Versus Dawid.
They added a towel to the end.
Yes. So when they add that tav there, what they're doing is they're letting us know that it's feminine. Okay. So if it's feminine, the person who's doing the action on themselves, the verb actually has to be feminine too. Okay. That's why it's saying Sarah, because it's feminine. It's recognizing that she did this on herself. Right. So they added that. Right. And that's a sentence structure thing. Usually when they have something that was in a ha and then they put it in a sentence, they're going to change that hey to a tav. I think that was in some of our other lessons. Dawid and Yaakov mith quadashim. So when they said this, we can only do it in 4 different ways. What are they talking about? You guys remember? Just looking at these different ways. So what are they saying? Dawid is the masculine. That's number 1. Number 2 is feminine. It could be done that way. And these are masculine singular, feminine singular. The third way is what? Masculine plural. And the fourth way is feminine plural. Those are our 4 different ways that it could be done. Okay. Now remember, in our 4 different ways, how many singulars will I be able to get out of the masculine? Well, first person, second person, third person. Feminine singular, how many ways? First person, second person, third person. Masculine plural, how many different ways? First person, second person, third person. Feminine plural, first person, second person, third person. When we say first person, it's common. Okay, it's common. You know, ani or ata or at. It's common. Okay. Second person, you. Third person, it could be he. It could be him. It could be his. Okay. Plural. Right. Say third person on the masculine. Well, what do we have? First person is common, right? Then it could be you for the second person, plural, or it could be them or us in third. So we have a combination of, 4 different ways, but in each one of those categories, you have 3 different persons that you have to address in the singular. I, you, or them, or he, or okay. We, you plural, or them. That's what they mean that you have 4 different ways. So we see that in this first example. Our next one was called rakats, meaning to wash. That's his basic verb form, right? Basic meaning. But now we're going to put it inside of this sentence. We're here with Dawid. So there you go. Dawid is mith rakates. David or Dawid is washing himself where? Presently. Question. Himself. Over here, what is himself?
Myth.
There you go. That's it. Not hard. You got to stay with the program. That's it. That's what's telling himself. Okay. The next line. Herself is this. See? Washing, washing. Rakates. And then because you're talking about a female, it's raketse. Raketse. Okay. That's it. When you're talking about plurality, you have the next line is Dawid and Yaakov. Going this direction. Themselves. Now let's just read it like this. Dawid and Yaakov themselves washed them. Okay. Right here. Themselves. Okay. Plural, meaning washed themselves. This tells you that it's more than one. That's all it's saying. And how do we know it's more than one? Because we got two people, Dawid and Yaakov, two males. Sarah wa Raquel. They myth rakatsoth. The oath here tells you it's more than one. The rakats is to wash, and this right here is themselves. So as you see, it's nothing but a puzzle that you put pieces together with. Third example, lavash. Okay. Dawid myth lavesh. Dawid himself washed. That's how, if you were just going to go that way, you could get it. But it don't make no sense because we don't talk like that. You know, it could be, excuse me, I said lavesh. Lavesh dressed himself, Dawid. Dressed herself, Sarah. Dawid and Yaakov dressed themselves. Sarah and Raquel themselves dressed. Okay. Just having your pieces, knowing what it is. Pretty simple. You just got to remember that any present tense is going to have these two pieces added to the front for a present tense. If it's a past tense, it's going to be a hey and a tav. Okay. That's the past tense. Quiz question, future tense. What can it be?
Will what? Will?
Well, in the future tense, we have letters like an aleph. We can use a yod. We can use a tav, right? We can use a noon. The aleph is I. The yod is he. The tav is you, masculine or feminine, and the noon is we. You see? So you can add those letters to the front, and then guess what the next letter would be? It'd be a tav. So it'd be yith. This right here will be oath. This one right here will be tith. Okay. Or tith. And this one here will be nith. See? So and those are the future tense. How do we know it's future? Because you're going to add future tense letters. If you know your letters, you'll be like, oh, that's an aleph, that's I. Oh, that's a yod, oh, that's he. Oh, they added a noon right there. Okay, that's we. We will what? We will do this for ourselves. I will do this for myself. Okay. And that's in future tense. So those are the combinations that you'll find in your lessons. You'll be like, okay, I remember seeing the tav. Is a Hithpael only a H or a hey and a tav? See, that would be the question. Because this is what I was looking for. When I first got into it, I was like, well, you know, the Hithpael, I know this is the, you know, the piece. I know that's definitely Hithpael. But when I didn't get into the future, the present tense, I had to understand and accept that this right here is a Hithpael as well. It's just in a different state. It's in a present tense. It's in a different tense, different state. Okay. If it had a yod and a tav, I would have to accept, okay, well, that second letter is the tav. So that right there is a future tense because that's a future tense letter. The mem is not a future tense letter. It's not part of that category. Okay. The noon is, the yod is, the aleph is, right? And the tav is. And what's in the past? The only one that's going to be in the past is the hey and the tav. So in each one of these categories, you got a letter that tells you where it's at. You got a group here, and you got a group here, and you got a group here. So again, it's past, present, and future. That's all we always have to remember. Past, present, and future. Past, present, and future. Past, present, and future. Okay, then you got your groups, right? How is something operating within the past, present, and future? So we got our groups. Is it a simple way? Is it a forceful way? Is it a causative way? Or is it a reflexive one on doing on oneself? So we determine that. So here it is. You got to find out if it's past, you got to find out if it's present, and then you have to find out if it's future. Your letters are going to tell you these things, okay? Little clues, okay? Then you're going to find out if it's first person. Is it second person? Or is it third person? Then you're going to find out if it's masculine, if it's feminine, if it's singular, or if it's plural. You're going to find those things out. And guess what tells you if it's past, present, and future, or first or second or third, or masculine or feminine, or singular or plural? What do they use to tell you these things? Somebody tell me.
Is it positioning and the letters?
Yes. Letters and excellent, Dr. Ured. Letters and position. Where is it located? If it's the letters in the beginning, in this box, it's in the future, and that's in the front. If the letter is in the middle, depending on what the letter is, it's in the present. Okay. And it also, remember, don't get tricked. It also has to do with what letters are being used, because you don't use a mem and a tav in the middle of a word. Okay. You don't. So you get confused. Well, the mem and the tav is at the front, so that's future tense. Not according to the rules. The rules are this is added to the front because it's representing a present tense action on oneself. Okay. If it's in the past, going back to this box, then it would be added to the end, like the letter, you know, a tav and a yod, T. See? So depending on what the tense is, past, present, and future, the letters will be in the beginning, the middle, or the end. And it depends on what those letters are, okay? If a Y is added to the front of a future tense verb, or 3 letters, that doesn't mean that the Y is a future tense letter, because it's not. The only letters that are future tense letters is the aleph, the yod, right? What else would I tell you? The tav and the noon. See, those are the only ones that are going to be added to the front or future tense. In what state? In a future tense, in that tense. Okay. You put a Y on the front, it just means and. That's all it means. So that's where it gets confusing, because you're like, okay, well, there's something in front of this root. It's a Y in front of it. So I guess it's future tense. No. Not if you know what that letter Y means. So you can only mean and. Okay. Or it's a, you know, it's and in the front of a word. But if that was put in the middle of a verb of a 3-letter root, then you say, okay, well, that's present tense. And why do I know? Because it has a dot over it. I know that it has a dot over it. That's that O sound. Okay. All right. But what if the Y is on the end of it? Does it mean and? No. Would it be an O right here? It could be for him. But if it doesn't, it has the dot on this other side. You're like, oh, I know what that means. That means they. That's what it means, they. Well, what kind of they? Well, it depends on what the first letter is. Is it a yod? See? So you're right, Dr. Ured. It's the letters and the position of the letters that tell you if something is past, present, and future. It's the letters and the position of the letters that tell you whether or not it's masculine or feminine. You know, if it's im on the end, does that mean that it's in the past? No, it doesn't mean that. It means that I'm recognizing that these letters represent plurality for a male. If it's oath on the end of a word, you know, what is that telling me? Oh, it's telling me that it's plural for what? A feminine. That's all it's telling me. I've accepted that. I know that. So once you establish that and you know that, you're like, okay, I got my pieces. I know what they are. I know what my pieces are, right? So we're just going through these lessons to figure out what are the pieces and where do they go and what do they mean in each one of their positions. I couldn't have said it any better, Dr. Ured. It's the letters and it's the position of the letters that determine whether or not something is in the past, present, or future, whether it's first person, second, third person. So, question for all of us is this. You tell me, when I wrote that, where does that go? On the beginning of a word, the middle, or the end?
And
Thank you. Tell me, is that masculine or feminine?
masculine,
Tell me, is it singular or plural?
Plural.
plural.
Okay, that's what it is. See? That's all this is. All right? That's all that is. Okay? Now, this right here is a wa. What does that mean?
It means
And
several things.
It's several things. It means and. What else could it mean?
them.
They,
It could mean them at the end if it had a little
Them.
comma right here on the end. Yes. Or it can mean him if you put an over on the top of it. Just depends on where that dot is, right? You understand? So that's what that means, is a conjunction. But agriculturally, it's the tent peg. Grammatically, it's a conjunction. So you see what I'm saying? In English, it's the letter W. The sound is a wa. That's the name of the letter. So you can see how dynamic this is. It operates in all different types of ways. So when it's part of a root, because they are part of roots sometimes, because that is one of the child roots. Remember? See, because it's a child root as well. It goes along with its other, family members like an aleph or a wa or a yod or a hey. You see? That's how it works. All right, let me ask you something else. If I have a 3-letter root box right here, and I add the aleph to it, okay, and pretend this is the root inside here, and I put this letter aleph right in front of that root, that box of root, is that a past, present, or future?
Is it future?
Sure, because it's in the front. Perfect. It's in the front of the root. If I put this next letter right here, a tav, with a little yod, if I put that T, where would I put that? Would I put that in the front, middle, or the end of a root?
the end.
The end, because that only goes, that's only a suffix, it's a formative that goes on the end to tell you that it means I. in the past. Okay, man, I've done something, it means perfectly, I've done it. Okay, so that's all it is. Okay, if I just said a yod right here, and I put that on the front of a root, what person am I talking? First person, second person, third person?
First,
Third. He. And it means will, because I've added it as future tense. Okay.
Second.
All right. So it's first, it's third person. He will.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. If I put a tav on the front of a root, what would it mean? Is it first person, second person, third person? On the front of a root.
the second person, you.
Yes, absolutely. You. Okay. And if that same root was added to the root and then on the end of it was a yod, then I would know it's feminine. If it had another ending on it that told me that it was an oath, then I know that you could be plural. Okay. So you just got pieces to your puzzle. But let's ask the question: what's the main part that you need to be looking at? What's the main thing I want you to always look at?
The root.
The root. The root is the most important. The root is the most important. Now, you might not know who the parents are, but if you know the child, you can get an idea who the parents are. Let me give you a test. Who's the parents?
Olive in the bait.
Thank you. Okay. Here's the word love. Who's the parents?
Out from the bed.
This is a tricky one. Actually, the parents in that word is those. Because love means, hey means to behold and to look. Remember, these both can either be one or the two, right? So that was a tricky one. And this is the house. That's love, to behold the house. Okay. So the true parent of this one, it got me too, Dr. Red, don't trip. It got me. So in that case, remember, because the family could be, there's a family for each of them. The Aleph is a family. The Bet has a family. The Gamil has a family. The Dalet has a family. The Hay has a family. So you got to figure out which one. So once you know it, right? Like I know now, because I thought first, okay, then the parents right here would still be the father. No. Every letter has its own family. And in each one of these families, which is the Aleph or the Bet or the Gimel or any of these families, they can have up to 12 kids, 13. They can add children to their families, right? Right. So I put that wrong. So in each one of these families, you might have some families that will not have no Alephs in their family. Really no strength. You might have a family that got nothing but yods and was. You see? So yeah, we'll learn the grammar and we'll learn the sentence structure and we'll learn what these things mean, but also too, if you understood like where the root is, because the root is the most important part. Everything else is just add-ons, that's all. Everything else is just an add-on. So your vocabulary is the most important part. Because if you got the vocab down, you can break everything down. That's what I'm trying to tell you. And then they have some other examples here. Oh, here it is. Here was the example. Okay. Let's look at this example for the one, if I am washing myself in the water, snow. Okay. So look. I think you mentioned it, Akoti Marcia. You said add ani, and you were correct. You were absolutely 100% correct. You should give yourself a hug if you can. Number 2 says here, if I mithracates by may shaleg. Shaleg means snow. That's what it means. Im here, or im means if, and then I am is a no, ani. That's how you would identify as, because we're in the present tense. Ani. Mithrakates. Myself washing in the waters of the snow. Okay? You were absolutely 100% correct. You would put ani in front of it to identify oneself. Ani. Okay? Perfect. And of course, and that's that wa, she, which is he. Implied, there is no word for is, that's implied, is sanctifying herself. Herself is right here, and the sanctification is right there. Because it's going on as we speak, that's where it's the ing. From is that mem, and tumum mitum matumatha. Here's our root. Tumath. But remember, when you put it in the sentence, they change it to a tav. And of course, that dot with the hey in it, because a lot of people might have a question, what does that mean? Does anyone know what that means? What is that hey on the end? I know it's feminine, but why does it have a dot in it? Why do you think that dot's there?
Double?
What'd you say, Dr. Red?
Is it double?
No, it's not double. Actually, what it is possessive. That's what it means. It means it belongs to her. Okay. That's what it means. It's possessive. Herself. She's, for her impurity. It belongs to her. It's hers. So anytime you see a hey on the end of word, it's still feminine. But when you see a hey with a dot, it's possessive. It belongs to her. Like, for example, the part of her that is hers is this impurity belongs to her and only her. This is a trip, because isn't it what our Torah portion was talking about? See, I'm telling you, sanctifying herself from her impurity, her nida, okay, which is her impurity. The mitumatha. That's it. How many kohanim do we have in number 3? How many is that?
Is it 3?
It's more than 1. That's all it means. That's all this means right here. No distinct number. We know that it's more than 1. It's not singular. It could be 2 or more. Okay. How many is this?
More than one.
More than 1, 2 or more. If we wanted to know if they were going to tell us the names, the proper nouns of the people, like, Dawid and Yaakov, then, and then, Joseph or Yosef, then you would know how many people there are. But they haven't done that. They've only told you kohanim, so you don't know how many it is. And so when you read the text and you're reading the scrolls, you would understand, okay, well, they mentioned kohanim. Did they tell me how many? No, it could have been 5. It could have been 7. It could have been 10. We don't know unless they specify in the text, like Aharon, Nadav, and Avihu. Bring those guys up. Oh, they killed those other 2, Nadav and Avihu. That leaves us with Eleazar and Ithamar. Those are the 2 plus Aharon, so we know it's 3 of them at that time. Any questions?
I have one question. I don't know if it's out of the way, but so if you have the myth, is there a myth Hithpael? If there's a Hithpael?
No,
Is there such thing as
That's a great question. That's an excellent question. Thank you for that question, because I mentioned it, but let me just be clear. The myth Hithpael, there's not a myth Hithpael, is still considered part of the Hithpael family.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not, it won't be a myth Hithpael. Okay. And the reason why it's not a myth Hithpael is because it would, add to the 7 verb stems. Okay. So when I say 7 verb stems, what I'm talking about is, and let me just help everybody understand what I'm saying, because there's only 7 of them. Okay, and they operate the way that they do. So let's share the screen again with a new share, and I'm gonna put it right here. All right. All right. So when I say 7 verb stems, what I'm really saying is this. I'm saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I say there's 7 of them. Okay. So, but we only have we only have 4 groups. So how am I going to get 7 out of 4 groups? Group number 1, group number 2, group number 3, and group number 4. How am I getting that out of there? How am I getting 7 out of 4? Huh. Okay. So group number 1 is simple. Group number 2 is forceful. Group number 3 is causative. Group number 4 is on oneself. So let's just call it reflexive. Okay. Group number 1, I have an active and a passive. Group number 2, I have an active and I have a passive. Group number 3, I got an active and I got a passive. Group number 4, I have an active and I have a passive together on oneself. Group number 1 consists of 2 different ways it could be done. Group number 2 can be 2 different ways. So this is group 1. This is group 2. This is group 3. And this is group number 4. Each one of these groups have their own names. Okay. So we're going to get to this in our up and coming lessons, but I'll just tell you straight up what they are. Okay. Group number 1 is not only called simple, but the proper name for it is called the Hithpael. Group number 2 is called the Hithpael. Group number 3 is called the Hithpael. Group number 4 is called the Hithpael. Now check this out. I have one name for this one. The Hithpael is the active. Okay. Well, what about the passive? What's the name of group number 1? This is a different thing. It's passive. This action is completely different than the passive action. Oh, that's called a Hithpael. Okay, so active for group number 1 is PL. That's the active, right? Well, what would be the passive? That would be called the, let me see, this is the PL. Oh, I'm sorry. Group number 1 is called the Hithpael, or excuse me, Hithpael. That's the passive. The passive on the group number 2 would be called the Hithpael. Okay, that's the passive. Group number 3, you got the Hithpael. Well, what's the passive's name? Oh, that's called the Hithpael. See? So there's 7 different names. Okay. So let me clear it all out for us. Here's the names. First name, Hithpael, meaning work. Second one, that's active. I almost made that mistake again. Hithpael, that's passive. Active, passive. Active, passive. Okay, but this is group 1, which is simple or basic. Okay. This one here is called PL, forceful. What's his passive name? Pual. Number 5, this is group 2. Consists of both active and passive. This is a forceful action, the type. This one right here is Hithpael, which is a causative. Hithpael, which is this is active for the first one, passive is the second one. That right there is group number 3, which is causative. Okay. Last one, number 7, is called Hithpael, which is group number 4, which is both on one self, which is both active and passive together, because that's why you're doing it on yourself. Does that make sense?
Perfect. Thank you. You made it so
Yeah.
easy.
It's super easy, right? So even within all of these, and I'm sorry for keeping you guys over, even within all of these different ways that is being said, okay, you still notice something. And let me point it out to you. You notice that this has a P and a lamed. This has a PH, which can be a still a pay. PH, this is still a pay. And then a lamed, okay? Okay. There it is. Pay and lamed right here. Pay and lamed right here. Pay and a lamed right here. Pay and a lamed right here. Pay and a lamed right here, which all shares this root called a pa'al, and pa'al means to work. And a work, in this case, they call it a verb because it's an action. They all are pa'als. They're just different ways that it's operating. That's all. And a pa'al is a root. That's why I told you the most important part of anything that we do is going to be about a root. Because how is this root working? How's it working out of the ground? You know what I'm saying? How is it working? You know? Praise Yah. Thank you guys for coming to class today. I enjoyed teaching you. And the Most High